G'day guys and welcome to a quick review of Saturday's meeting at Rosehill. There's also, might have a quick look at Gold Coast if I get a chance. But concentrating on Rosehill, the track was pretty Rosehillish. It was, sort of up there and on the pace. Was a good place to be. Getting off that rail and running on it was hard to sustain a run from back and wide around the turn and keep coming. There were a couple of fast run races where horses did make ground and one that came from last. So it was a pretty fair track. Especially for what we've seen recently. So most runners had their chance. The first race of the day was a 2-year-old Open. It looked like a pretty good race on paper from horses that trialled and things like that, but it was quite a slow tempo and a pretty slow time overall. Pretty bunched, and I'm very scared of the form coming out of this race, even though I had high hopes for it going in. A bit of a funny sort of event with Blonde Intuition setting up a really slow tempo and then dropping out after looking like travelling really strongly on the turn. The winners had the right run in behind the leader, got out at the right time and won not impressively. Envy of Alls sat outside the leader. That's not easy to do usually, and kicked on, so hard to knock it. Ipso Facto sat 3 wide on a slow tempo, so don't want to overplay that too much either. It's had its chance. Poetic Charmer was a little bit held up in the middle and checked a touch, but pretty much again had its chance as well. We'll have a quick look at it. Things to sort of notice: the Forgive horses that are possible in the race are probably Manipulate, who didn't jump the greatest and comes back in the race. The Godolphin second stringer in Siam, is who in here is a horse to look at. Doesn't have a lot of luck. Not a lot happens in the run. They sort of get back. Madame Moustache ends up 3 wide, or drops in at the end actually, and ends up on the back of sort of Ipso Facto, which wasn't a bad spot really considering the slow tempo. But really not a lot happens. The winner does look to be travelling strongly here, and Hutchings copped a suspension for that interference, but won him the race obviously. These runners down the outside, they all look like they're sort of coming home off a really slow tempo and sprinting hard, but the time's not great, so I'm a little bit concerned about the whole thing. Obviously Viridine got the job done, but wasn't exactly attacking the line. Nothing really was, so I'm just concerned about this race all the way around. So really going to stay out, and if I had to be anything, I'd be negative on it. So I really want these horses to prove themselves at subsequent starts before getting too excited about any of them, which is a bit of a shame. But if I'm going to forgive any from the race, it's probably Manipulate, who's been taken out the back last off that slow tempo, and maybe Sam, who really paraded really well, but just didn't look didn't have a lot of luck in the run. Race 2, another race we're not going to spend too much time on. Really average highway. They've run along at an even tempo and basically not slow, but just an even tempo and run pretty average time. So for me, the race was decided in this first part. The favourite, I thought, really had to push forward and has one attribute, and that's pace, and had fitness on its side. Its main dangers were back markers, and they really had to push the button early and take control of the race. They decided not to do that and take a sit, and that was basically the favourite out of the race, even though it was beaten narrowly. I thought it was a very strange decision, but that's obviously their decision. They go along steady here. The winner eventually is back in the centre. The other horse to look at and the one to follow from the race for mine, the only horse to follow out of the race, was a horse called Loves a Hassle. Was well backed here and ends up back last. Atlantic Sentinel, which ends up in the finish, had every chance on the back here. Academy Hill, every chance. The winner, every chance. They basically all had their chance for mine, except for probably Loves the Hassles, had the hardest run. Has the ability to be up on speeds, had to come really wide here and sustain the run for longer than the rest of them, and possibly just knocked up a little bit. If he went back to, say, 1100 big track, back in grade, he's the one for me out of the whole race. The rest of them, okay, oh lordy, you can't probably knock it. It's put 2 together this time in and maybe looks like it wants a bit further, if anything. but the rest really did have their chance here. The other three, they can pick up races, but nothing you can follow with confidence. So, Oh Lordy, I'm not knocking it, but probably am a little bit because it's won a race that is pretty average. Loves a Hassle's the one that comes up with a 5th on its scorecard, and that's probably not a great show of what it actually should have done in the race. It probably should have won. So it's the one that comes out with a bit of upside. Race 3 for the 3-year-olds over the 1800, and a bit of a lead up to the Brisbane Carnival for quite a few of these. There were queries over a lot of runners with Octavian, Black and Gold and Oklahoma Girl coming out of the same race. Black and Gold had no luck there. It was a very slow tempo, and Oklahoma Girls outsprinted it. So there was query to see whether Oklahoma could step up, because she'd come off a couple of slower tempos and put them away. It was either going to be a case of she was looking for further and going to be more dominant, or she might not run it out. And she was given a great ride here, had a chance, and definitely a little bit soft late. So maybe she doesn't run that trip out, which is a shame. The winner definitely did run the trip out. Second horse paraded incredibly well and really just is thriving this preparation and continually improving. No knock on it at all. I think Cross Stitch possibly wants to go back in distance, if anything, racing well enough to pick up a race. And Siren's Fury definitely raced like someone that definitely wants to come back in trip, if anything. And here we go. Race, yeah, we'll just watch the replay, sorry. Just watching another race at the same time with a bad fall at Kempsey. Hope they're okay there. They set up a pretty solid tempo here. The time ends up really quite good, so it was a good test over 1800 metres for these 3-year-olds, and it should be a good, strong lead-up form race for the Brisbane Carnival. So a horse like Black on Gold definitely can be followed. Sorry, I'll just go back a little bit and say, so this is Siren's Fury out the back here. There's a bit of trouble with it at the start. Missed it, ran out, and then came back in and ended up a long way off them, but he really didn't finish the race off quite like we would have expected. Oklahoma Girls had this dream run in here and gets all the splits when it needs it, gets to the outside when it needs it, similar to Octavian Augustus. And Black on Gold, if anything, to do a little bit more work, but probably ridden it that little bit more patiently, let him finish off. He doesn't look flawless in his action and the way he sort of stretches out, and that once he gets himself balanced that last little bit, seeing green, dragging around, he's definitely running the trip out, and that's probably what you're looking for. He's definitely the strongest finish in that race. And the only little query I'd have is that maybe just a few of these don't run that out that well, and he's maybe won it by default a little bit as the strongest staying type. That's no knock on him going north, but maybe it means that these 3 runners probably need to go back to a mile, even maybe shorter for Oklahoma Girl to show her best. And Siren's Fury definitely the same sort of case. So possibly the rest of them, I'd rather see them go back in distance than up in trip to a race like a Derby sort of preparation race, or maybe a Grand Prix or something like that in Brisbane in the oncoming weeks. So Black on Gold's the one I could follow going to Brisbane. The rest of them I could follow, but definitely wanting back in distance to be confident. Octavian Augustus is airborne. Race 4, fast tempo, but really good time here. This looks like a one out of the box sort of horse. Waller likes producing them. I thought it was really strange that it hadn't trialled in sort of 9 weeks, which is not normal for the stable. So it was either really flying or it was just sort of going around getting ready for something else. But it was a bit strange for me, and I had the feeling it might be flying, especially when the money came for it early in the day. Ridden really confidently back in the field. There was obviously some tempo on paper, but they just must have believed that it didn't matter, and this horse had the quality on its side. The horse I kind of want to watch here is Passage of Time, who's had to do a bit more work than most here early, getting outside the leader, doing all the chasing, and it's a horse I really want to follow going forward in the future. The winner's back out here, has just done nothing in the run and then comes out and puts them away. The second horse, Kawakini, also coming down the outside, has been pace assisted, as has the winner, but they both pretty dominant late, and definitely no knock on either of them. It's racing really well, Kawakini, and can pick up something, place to advantage. The winner's just dominant late and just a really nice horse by the look of it. This horse here, Samadowd, I thought ran well first up. Maybe went a little bit one-paced around the bend after having a pretty nice run in transit. But gets held up inside quick feet here, and it's only when it sees a bit of daylight late, just keeps plugging away, and thought that's a good sign. You know, when it can get out to 1,400 metres and maybe dictate terms, will be a nightmare to beat in something similar. The run of quick feet for me here, having to cart them up and push them wide and do everything here, is probably a sign of a horse that's now ready. I think, like only knocks up this last bit. Really think quick feet's ready to go now. I'd love a big track and back in trip, but probably the same distance you can get away with. So quick feet definitely ready to win. The winner obviously progresses to better races. Not sure whether they just put it straight away and save it for the spring, or chase something in Brisbane, or wherever it goes, it'll be competitive. Passage of time's probably going to be similar. It's had a good preparation, 3 tough runs in its first prep, and it'll be either close to going away, or if it thrives, really trust that stable to place it to advantage, whether they back off it and give it a trial and a month between runs, or progress with it. Whatever they do with this horse, I'll trust that it's ready to go again, and it'll run well. Samadowd okay, and the Kawakini needs to be placed to advantage, but he's absolutely flying, there's no doubt about that. So nice positive race, want to be positive on plenty of horses coming out of it, good little race for sure. Race 5, slowish tempo, time's okay, sprint home obviously, and not a lot to be learnt for mine. The winner gets the right run, good ride, pushes out at the right time, shows its turn of foot, and that was what won at the race. Better Not Blue settled a bit closer in the run, thought he might do something a bit more positive, but that tempo again was probably against him. Kingsborough, first up, probably not ideally suited by Kingsguard, probably not ideally suited by a softish tempo, but again not suited first up either, so a really good pipe opener for it. Lofty's Menu battles away well, probably wants something a little bit easier. Believe, I thought, was a nice little pipe opener and might be ready to do something now. At Final Decision, that's not Final Decision. Lofty's Menu, they're all solid enough runs up here, and this horse here, Berry Delicious, is one to keep a really solid eye on going forward for mine. You'll see it struggle to keep in touch, maybe lost a little bit of confidence, but what it does late's quite nice. So Canny Essen gets out at the right time, puts them away. Careless is really honest up on speed, a horse I missed sort of talking about the horses earlier. It was well placed here and ran well, but that's the kind of horse it is. Needs everything to go its way to win, but it'll keep running these honest races, there's no doubt about that. Kingsguard needs to probably dictate races to win, and maybe one more run. Better Not Blue needs run on conditions and wet track, ready to win. Believe maybe needs one more, but a step up in distance, she could be dangerous in a race. And this horse here, Very Delicious, really did some good things this last part, running nearly up the back of them after being detached early, and it was a slow tempo. So some good stuff there. Some horses that can go on to win some races this time of year, no doubt. Probably Lofty's Menu's the one that needs to go back in grade. I'd like to see it back to the provincials. Canny Essence a horse, even though it's won over the 1350 here, I'd love to see back to 1200 too. So interesting day, interesting race, and can really see these horses going on to win some races here, even though it was a bit of a bunchy finish. They're all sort of at the right stages of their preparation to bounce off it. So yeah, Canny Essence back in distance, nice. Careless an each way chance wherever it goes. Probably needs one more. Kingsguard. Lofty's Menu back in grade. Better Not Blue always needs to be well placed to win, but he'll run honestly if he finds those conditions. Very Delicious ready to do something, and Believe maybe one more, but once it gets to a mile plus, really will show its best. Next race, a fast tempo, fast race. They've come home a little bit soft, but it was the fastest tempo of the day, this and the next race. And Rogish does a good job up in distance. Tim Martin's just too good. He found the right race, found the right track for this horse to go up in distance. If it had been Randwick 1500, I don't think he would have run it, but definitely wouldn't have been anywhere near as well placed. He's done a really good job here. Great ride from Hieronymus. puts it in a really solid position, gets it rolling, never gets held up, and keeps its momentum, and just too good for a fast finishing Speed Hero that probably should have won the race. It did have things in its favour to do that, but probably should have been winning. Chandana had no luck at all and ran really well. Level 8's probably just found his grade there and done a really good job. Dreamforce is the horse to follow, no doubt, after having to work really hard on a fast tempo. Colonel Cluster, he's a horse that was only first up here and did a good job too. So, again, a bit to be taken out of this race. We'll see they do bounce and run a bit early. Colonel Custer, for whatever reason, kicks up and really puts the tempo on, which makes the race for Roguish probably, because it gets that position there trailing the couple of leaders. Chandana was wide, no cover. We'll watch this Speed Hero. There's just no urgency to get to the right position and gets held up and out, and it's just should have been here, peeling, and for whatever reasons, inside heels, still inside heels, takes its time, checks off heels, still not balanced or getting wound up when it should have been sort of here by this position. I think it really should have won clearly, Speed Hero. But in saying that, I would have been saying it was pretty flattered by the tempo, even though it is a good race. So something missed for Speed Hero, but still a good effort. Roguish, all honours. Dreamforce, the one that had to press early, sit outside the lead, kick clear with Roguish, and only tied that last bit. Definitely the run of its career, and definitely ready to win now in a race that it can dictate terms or get a little bit of a sit. That'll really bring it on, I reckon, to be hard to beat in whatever it goes in. Fine Apple is suited by this sort of tempo and one batted. And that's about it from this race. The horse to follow, Dreamforce, in the very near future. And there's quite a few going okay. Chandana's going well to win. That was just, even luck and a better draw. It probably just wins. And obviously Speed Hero was a little bit unlucky, but had things in its favour. So the horse I did think was a little bit disappointing was Miami Dade here, and it's probably one I could pan, if anything, from the race. Really had a tempo to suit, and really was weak late, if anything, of all these runners. So it's the one to pan out of the race. Not that it was too obvious. Solid enough tempo here in the 7th, the Lord Mayor's Cup. Top of my list. Really well ridden. Follows a tearaway in Hunter Jack that set that bowling tempo, and it was allowed to build its momentum and just pinch a break on Allergic, who first up just probably peaked on its run a little bit late, and that's cost it. Jessie Bell every chance in third. Basically every horse has had its chance here. There's no real excuses except for maybe Hunter Jack, and it's an 80 to 1 chance, beaten a long way. So really all merit with the winner, and similar with the second horse, it's done a good job off a break. New Tipperary's pretty disappointing for mine, and Astronomos. All these horses had their opportunity. Happy Hannah even doesn't run on too well. Big Blue is an improved performance, but nothing too exciting. And the winner just looks like she's capable of going to a race like the McKell Cup in a few weeks, or on its way to Brisbane, I believe, and can continue to do damage. She's racing really well and running good time and doing everything herself. So, she puts herself out of trouble, and she's just an improving horse on the way up and hard to knock. But not a lot to be learnt from that race. Allergic's probably the one that can go on to Brisbane and do something. This horse is an underrated horse. Fell under my guard yesterday. I thought it was going to have to do way too much work, and really just did it, but still put them away. They didn't go quite as hard as I thought, but it didn't matter. They still went pretty solid, and this horse was a good win. No luck with a lot of horses behind, so that's stopping me from declaring it going forward and really winning a good race, but hard to knock her in the same token. Frill Seeking's good effort, ridden back off the speed and comes down the outside. Knit and Pearl doesn't have a lot of luck. Wild Famous has no luck. Torpenhouse very plain. There's something wrong with him. I'm sure not. Something wrong's a bad word, but there's something not right. He just doesn't want to stretch out and really put races away. LMNOP was a little bit plain here. Balmain Boy okay first up. Yuma Desert's just struggling a touch at the moment. Sweet Serendipity just probably had to do a little bit too much work, and Final Decision is probably the best last of the day. Just had no luck at all whatsoever and should have finished a lot closer. So we'll have a look at it. They've gone along here pretty solidly. Untamed Diamond sits outside the leader, controls its tempo. The second horse, Thrill Seeking here, Torpenhow, Wild and Famous, and Final Decision are the two desperately unlucky runners. Hard to tell what they would have done. Knit and Pearl get squeezed up a bit here as well. So it's these three horses that all struggle to get runs, that all look capable of doing something. See, Final Decision was the one really building through its gears for mine and the one most affected. And Wild and Famous sneaks through, whereas Final Decision still running up their backsides at the end. So complete forgive for him. He's going okay. Winner's flying. Thrill Seeking a good effort off a break. Knit and Pearl's racing honestly. Wild and Famous honest as always. Raging's honest. Balmain Boy first up's a good effort. There's plenty to be liked here. Not a lot to pan. Torpenhow's the one that scares me, but he is such a big horse and first up that maybe he just needed the run, and when they've run along a bit, it might have gassed him a bit. He might have just spent a lot of his tickets keeping up in the run and may have struggled to sprint off that. Lucky Last and soft tempo, not ridiculously slow. They've run along okay and then built off it. Two smart horses up the front had the right runs in Bonnie O'Reilly and Times of War. She's just not hitting the line. I thought that was her optimum setup, 12.50 back to 11, one out, one back, got the weight pull. Everything in her favour there, and if she was going to beat these sort of horses, it was today. In saying that, she's a good horse, there's no doubt about that. She's got great speed, a nice little turn of foot. She just needs to be timed to perfection. Good ride on the winner was the difference. She's obviously got that little edge on her as well, ability-wise. Machine Gun Jub's ridden quiet. He's one of the runs of the day. There's no doubt about that, and it's worth watching just for her finish. She's eased out of the race at the start, which is not normal, but they obviously identified a bit of speed here and decided to try riding her quiet off a bit of a freshen. The winner's behind the leader. Second horse here, and Machine Gun Jubs is back second last on the outside. In Times of War just looked like it was a chance of pinching a bit of momentum and a break here, but Bonnie just gets out at the right time, takes a little bit of time to balance up and then goes. And here's Machine Gun Jubs launching down the outside past some horses that had fitness and other things in their favour. And she's quite a good effort there. Maybe just peaked on a run the last 20 yards, 30 yards too. So she can improve off that. The winner can improve off that. It was only first up. The third horse is racing in terrific fashion and definitely not a horse you'd ever want to lay or anything like that over 1,100 metres. It's a really honest horse that'll win more than it'll lose simply through its racing pattern and its good little bit of acceleration it has. So Bonnie and Machine Gun Jubs can be competitive in anything they go to. LA Cheval was okay first up, had to work. A little bit disappointed in Rawinda, but other than that, not a lot to be learnt. Pretty solid day all around. So that's it, and do something similar next week. Thanks, guys.